Hello and welcome back to another episode of Inside the Asperger Studios. You know when those moments when your body remembers what your mind tries to forget? When stress sits just beneath the skin? Today we're diving into healing that goes deeper than words, the kind that starts with listening to your body. My next guest is a holistic somatic and family psychotherapist, a counselor, and a certified tension and trauma release exercise instructor, helping people move through trauma and reconnect with their strengths. If talk alone hasn't been enough, this conversation might just shift something inside of you. So sit back, relax, and grab your favorite beverage, and I'll see you on the other side. See you there.
I wanna believe in the truth, but only see what I'm shown. Got the freedom to choose, but can't decide on my own. Follow what the group is thinking, bottle up my intuition till it's popping up.
And we'll do a formal one.
Hello, and welcome back to another episode of Inside the Asperger Studios. Today I'm joined with Suzy Butts. Welcome to the show, Suzy.
Hi, Reed. Thanks for having me on your amazing podcast.
Thank you. So why don't we start off with, why don't you tell me a little bit about yourself?
Okay, so I'm a somatic psychotherapist, and that means I work with a body-based approach to what's going on, and I specialize in stress and trauma. I came to that through my early life and also through my first career, which was 23 years in IT. And I realized how stress and trauma impact people, including myself. And so in my early 40s, I got called to retrain, and I went and did sorry. So I went and did an advanced diploma in holistic psychotherapy. And I chose not to do it at university because at university here, I'd already had a career completely in my head. And university psychology here is very in your head, and it's not coming from within. And this course was as rigorous, and it actually is now a university degree, but it came from the heart, and it was about you had to work on yourself as much as learn how to work with others. And I found myself drawn to stress and trauma. And that has led me through a career of counselling, psychotherapy. And what I noticed was if we did the traditional psychotherapy approach to therapy, people would often get lost in their own stress and trauma and not be able to make much progress. And I realised I needed with every client to teach them how to down-regulate their nervous system first so we could separate out this stress from the story. And then we work with what's needed over here once they can genuinely calm their nervous system down. And again, this we'd learnt in the therapy because the first book on this somatic approach to stress and trauma was published in 2003, which I find frighteningly recently. Now we've got people like Bessel van der Kolk has published all his work, but that first one was from Peter Levine. There'd been books before saying trauma was about held in the body, but to me, Peter Levine's work was amazing because it said, look, stress is a physiological process that needs to complete, and we're the only animal on the planet that doesn't complete it. And from that, with all my work and study and all the rest of it, I've realised we're also the only animal on the planet prone to PTSD.
So true.
Yep. So my whole thing, so my business name now is From Surviving to Thriving. Because if you think about it, we've come out of thousands of years of survival. Kings didn't get to be kings because they were nice. They were traumatised people who inflicted trauma on everybody else in the hope that they would feel good by ruling and what have you. So we all learnt to survive, suck it up, princess, just, move over it.
Yeah.
Yep. And that's okay if you only live a shortened lifespan. So again, I grew up in the 1970s, I was a teenager. And I remember hearing the average life expectancy for men was 40 to 50 years old and women 50 to 60 years old. And that horrified me because my parents were in that sort of age group at the time. We've now doubled our life expectancy, but we haven't changed our approach to the world. And I'm guessing it's a worldwide movement of having an Are You OK day
Mhm.
once a year. But it's once a year. And outside that day, it's sort of like, well, aren't you over that yet? Your grief, your trauma, your stress, whatever it happens to be. So I've always wanted to help other people to thrive in their lives. So I'm now moving forward with how do we downregulate that nervous system? Because when we do, we get much more clarity and we're able to move forward much more easily in our lives. Pardon me.
Now, what's funny is when you talk about stress, and you're right, people think, oh, I can get rid of stress, but no, you can't. Stress stays with you for the rest of your life. You need to either work with it, find ways to work around it, or deal with it head on. And because stress is something our body deals with every day. The minute you step out of that house to even to before that, the minute you wake up, your mind is thinking, what am I going to do today? Is the weather going to be like this? Every thought we have is a stress related situation,
Yes.
and we
And
cause
look,
it.
yeah. And we are designed to deal with stress. That's the thing. But what we're not meant to do is keep that stress held in our body. So I always say it's like we've got, and I'm going to do a little visual here, which I know isn't useful on a podcast, but it's like imagine a glass of to hold water. And when we're young, with only a little bit of water in that glass, the space is resilience.
Mhm.
But by not completing our body based stress process, over time, that water level gets higher and higher in the glass, and we get less and less resilience until it gets completely full and we're overwhelmed. And then we sort of, by the time all of us are 40, we're all got a glass that's nearly to its full point, and it doesn't take much to overwhelm us. But if we learn how to complete our body based stress process, we start to unwind it and we get our resilience back, we get our joy of life back, we get our energy back. And that's the most amazing thing. And the earlier we can learn to do that, the better it is for us. And it allows us to be aware of what's happening in me.
Now you're talking about stress and trauma being physiological, not just emotional or mental. That's such a powerful shift in our perspective. When did you first realize that the body held the key to healing?
Well, that when I was doing my studies from 2005 onwards, and since then, in all my work, I see it in people's bodies. And I would never have thought I would become someone who was body aware. Because after 23 years in IT, let me tell you, I lived in my head.
Ugh.
I thought I existed just up here in my head and that my body was just something to move my head around. But by down regulating the nervous system, pardon me, by down regulating the nervous system, we become embodied. And then my front brain is aware of my body's reactions. So Peter Levine actually says trauma is not the story and it's not the emotions, it's what's stuck in the nervous system.
Mm.
And that is true. So you don't have to, the old approach to working with trauma was often to have a catharsis. Let that person relive the trauma and try and get the experience out of the body. Doesn't work. It often re-traumatizes people. Whereas if you learn to complete this body-based stress process, the body just unwinds it of its own accord. And my thing is every time you do that, you learn and you heal and you grow. And you can even grow. There's a potential that every time we do this, we actually can grow new neurological processes as well. So one of the most common comments I get from clients after completing their body-based process for a couple of years, I'll get a message or a phone call going, who is this person in my body who doesn't react to the old triggers the way I used to, who can sit with discomfort and move forward? And that to me is amazing.
Now, would you say a lot of your clients would they be neurotypical or
Ah,
neurodivergent?
okay, so I get a broad range of clients, but I am finding the clients who love my approach most are neurodivergent.
No, are
Yeah.
you neurodivergent yourself?
Apparently not. I went to see last year whether I was ADHD, and the psychiatrist I went to said, I'm not going to diagnose you as ADHD because you're only really high on three of the five categories and you're borderline on the other two. And I must admit, on the drive home, I thought, why didn't I think to say to him, do you think at 66 I've possibly developed some really good coping mechanisms? Yeah. So
Now,
understanding, because that
go
was
on.
where I was going to go. Oh, sorry, go on.
No, go on. Finish up.
So one of the things I've also noticed, particularly with ADHD, a lot of ADHD symptoms are also trauma symptoms.
Hmm.
So for myself and for my clients, I find if I can teach me, well, when I downregulate myself, those ADHD symptoms that can blow me out of the water are minimized. And that to me is huge.
Hmm. Now, what is a typical session like with one of your clients? How do you work with them and how do you help them get from point A to point B to a point of realizing they've held so much stress in that it's what's stopping them from moving on?
I suppose in the very first session, I have a lovely little analogy that I use, and I'm happy to share that with you. And I think at the end of that, 100% of people say that gives me hope that I can change because they recognize it.
Now, your program from surviving to thriving really speaks to the heart. What does thriving mean to you, not just as a therapist, but as a human who's lived through their own challenges?
Okay, so surviving is I'm just ticking the boxes. Thriving
Mhm.
is I can feel love and experience unconditional love, and I can see it in others and myself, and which means I love myself genuinely. It means even when times are tough, I've got a core sense of joy deep inside me. It means I have good access to all my cognitive functioning. So my ability to hold concepts and use logic and set goals and make plans, and my ability to have energy to achieve those, and my ability to be present with myself, with others, and the environment, to be aware of myself, others, and the environment. Because when we're overwhelmed, all of that shuts down.
Hmm.
And we feel so isolated and we feel tired and everything is like I often describe it. Well, I know when I'm overwhelmed, it often feels like I'm walking through mud. It's like
Hmm.
every step is an effort to move forward in life.
I
And
mean,
so thriving is not feeling that. Thriving is look at all the opportunities. Where do I want to go today?
that is so true. When you are feeling overwhelmed, you feel like when you feel like you're just being overloaded with so much stimulation and your mind just can't process everything and you're struggling to survive and you're just trying your best. It's like going to work and all of a sudden you have this smell and this sound and all this work piling up and you're just surviving, trying to get through the day.
Hmm.
But if you can turn that survive to thrive and say, okay, I'm gonna get through this day step by step, tackle each little project that's bothering me, that's stopping me, then I can get to the end of the day, get home and relax.
Yes. And that's a big key one. It's about sometimes when, and particularly at work, for example, we have to go into survival mode just to get through the day.
Hmm.
But we need that front brain functioning, as you say, to divide it into those steps that you have to do and to do what you know you need to do to downregulate that oversensory stimulation. But when we get home, we want to genuinely downregulate our nervous system so that we can genuinely relax. Because often when we get home, we go, I'm so exhausted, I'm just going to veg out in front of the TV. That is just a coping mechanism. And it's not a genuine down regulation of our system. And when we do the genuine one, we get more energy, get more capacity.
That's kind of funny you say that because that reminds me of what somebody who, like me, who's autistic, would do after a long day of being overwhelmed from being out in society. We don't sit in front of a TV. We go into a dark room with soft music or low lighting and let our own bodies regenerate. Get
Mm-hmm.
to the point where we can cope and deal with what else is to come.
Yeah. Yep. And I would add in there, there needs to be some movement in there because to get into overwhelm, we had to come up through the movement of fight and flight.
Yeah.
And then we end up in the freeze response, which is part of the overwhelm and the trauma. And to come out of that, we have to activate movement to come back
Mhm.
out. Yeah.
Now you say that we're the only ones who can't complete our stress cycles.
Oh,
Why
I
is
didn't say
that?
can't. We don't.
We don't. Why don't we complete our stress cycles? What is
Because
stopping?
it, okay, so um, we have learned how to survive. So we stop completing our stress cycle. And there's another amazing scientist called David Baselli. Through the 1970s, 80s, 90s, he worked in every war zone. And what he observed there when the bombs would be coming and
Hmm.
everyone would grab the children and they'd run into the bomb fallout shelters, the children would be sitting there shaking, crying, displaying their fear. The adults were all rigidly solid. And he spoke to a lot of them and he asked them, why don't the adults behave like the children? And every one of them said, because we don't want the children to know we're scared. And he realized this was something we deliberately cut off to
Hmm.
help ourselves to survive. So he's the one who put in this whole movement approach to come back out of the charge in the nervous system.
So basically, what's happening then is we get so stressed, we get to a point where we just get to a place where we're like, okay, this is fine enough, but it's we don't realize that our stress is still there. How
Correct. We learn to dissociate.
then so it's still so basically then it's just sitting there then waiting
Yes,
it's still boiling.
that's right. And it's when you look at some of the PTSD symptoms and like if you think of soldiers who get flashbacks,
Yeah.
it's held in the body and we do the same thing. My body will remember traumas and it will re-experience those on the anniversaries of the traumas. And
Yeah.
I go, why do I feel really grumpy today? Because I've never processed that and let it out of my body and let it lie down as a memory that I can remember the event, but my body is still acting as though the event is still live.
Now, I mean, trauma happens when our internal resources get overwhelmed. How, and we blame ourselves because of it. How can we build resources and start to rebuild them and say, okay, now we need to recognize that there's still trauma inside us, there's still stress inside us. What can we do to rebuild to recognize that and slowly deal with it?
Okay, so it's not just internal resources. We have physical resources,
Hmm.
emotional resources, intellectual resources, and spiritual or energetic resources. And trauma happens when any or a combination of those are overwhelmed. We are designed to learn and increase our resources.
Yeah,
And if you think about a newborn baby has zero resources.
true.
And that's the job of adults, is to resource that child up and give it appropriate resources on every level. But a lot of parents don't understand how to do that. So by completing our own body-based stress cycle, we
Hmm.
start to automatically build those resources anyhow. It's like our system wants to restore the resources, but sometimes we need therapy. So an example I give is, like everybody else, when I go and buy the groceries, I'm not doing 2 or 3 trips to the car. If I can load myself up with everything and carry it all inside in one trip, and I'm going to put my muscles, ligaments, tendons, bones under some level of stress. And if I'm carrying heavy bags in my fingers aren't designed for that. They're designed for fine motor skills and for balancing heavy loads. But when I get into the kitchen and put those bags down, all those resources, the main ones, release instantly. I may have to rub my fingers to get the resources back. When I carry something that's too heavy, I can tear a muscle or snap a ligament or break a bone. I've now overwhelmed the resource and I have a trauma. Or if I continue to carry those bags in my fingers, I can get a cumulative trauma. And even where we look at the soldiers that have done multiple tours of duty, they're now calling that cumulative trauma. But the reality is, once the resources are overwhelmed, there is a trauma. A trauma is a trauma is a trauma. It doesn't matter how you got it. The complex traumas, where you've overwhelmed resources on several levels, are no different to treat than the I've just got a broken bone. I'm going to need to do some therapy with that. Okay.
Hmm.
So, and when we understand it, we can do that therapy on ourselves of completing our body-based stress process. And then we tend to learn and we automatically take in more resources.
Hmm. Now, how can somebody who's dealing with all this stress and the trauma recognize that they have this trauma built up and the stress? What are some of the symptoms they can look at when they look at themselves and go, "Oh, this I'm dealing with this. This is not just stress. This is trauma built from stress or vice versa."
They often have no energy. Okay.
Mhm.
So it's I just can't take another step. I can't even think of what I've got to do next. I have no energy. I'm tired. I wake up tired. That's one of the big ones. That overwhelming tiredness is one. I will find that my relationships aren't particularly great. I think I'm saying and expressing myself clearly, but others are getting irritated with me all the time
Hmm.
or misunderstanding me. I feel hollow inside
Hmm.
because I can't access this self love and the unconditional love that is out there for us all to access. I feel I'm doing my coping mechanisms. Now, we all need coping mechanisms to survive, and it can be behaviors or substances or whatever. But so a good example is, let's use the 3 most addictive substances to human beings: alcohol, nicotine, and carbohydrates.
Hmm.
So the reason they're addictive is because when they start to release into our bloodstream, they mimic the start of the release of serotonin, the feel good muscle relaxant,
Yep.
but they don't deliver. So if I'm not stressed and I go, oh, I'm having a cup of tea, I might have a biscuit with that. I'll have a biscuit, and often I'll find I've only eaten half the biscuit, okay, because I'm not stressed.
Hmm.
But if I'm stressed, I'll have one biscuit, and then it's like my nervous system distracts me, and next thing I've scoffed a whole packet. Then I go, oh, I'm useless, I'm horrible, I'm dreadful, I've broken my diet, and now, and I blame myself and I beat myself up. So what my nervous system was doing was trying to get more serotonin. But I wasn't aware of that. I only become aware of it after the fact. And if I don't know that's what my system was trying to do, I blame myself and tear myself down even more, which
Hmm.
is no use to me. Whereas if I have an awareness of what's going on, yes, I will still occasionally scoff the whole packet of biscuits
Yeah.
and want to beat up on myself. But these days I turn that round and go, wow, you're really stressed at the moment. You need to do some down regulating of your nervous system right now
Hmm.
rather than scoffing more biscuits.
I mean, that is so true. And when people think about it, when they eat something, they don't realize there is a trigger mechanism inside them that says you need to eat this. People think, oh, it's just an instinct, I'm hungry. No, there's an actual trigger somewhere inside your body. Either it's a stress related, trauma related. And I've talked with people about that you go through a bad relationship. There's that trauma triggering thing. Oh, I need to eat this.
Yes.
And then you wind up binge eating, and then it becomes an issue.
Yeah. And
Triggers,
then it's that negative cycle.
yeah.
Yeah.
Then people don't realize we have these built-in triggers. We just don't know they're there and aren't aware they're there until something triggers them.
Correct. And that's why I'm a firm believer in getting an understanding first. And I think I've realized that's one of my superpowers is to be able to explain neuroscience in a way that's really understandable for even 8-year-olds up. I find get what I'm saying. And once we understand what's happening, we've got the capacity to change. But if I have no awareness of what's going on, I'm going to continue the same thing because there's nothing that's giving me a hint that that's actually not helping me.
I mean, people don't realize what they're in until it's too late.
Correct.
I mean,
Absolutely.
you start eating, I mean, like I was saying, you start eating, oh, you're just like, oh, I'm hungry. No, there's something underlined that's saying, no, there's something telling you to eat. It's either a trigger of trauma, a trigger of the fact that you haven't eaten for God knows how many hours, or something else underlining that says you've been through too much and you need to do something about it. And
Yes.
as a you eat as an action. It's an instinctive action to eat, and you don't
Mm.
realize that. And there's ways you can counteract that.
Mm. And by down-regulating your nervous system,
Mhm.
you're less likely to get caught with that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
People need to downregulate their nervous system because then they can control their own systems and think, okay, I don't need to do this.
Correct. I have tools and I have information and tools
Mhm.
to help me to move forward rather than spinning in this cycle again and again.
Now, go on.
Yeah, go on.
For those who are stuck in survival mode for years or even decades, how do they even begin to come home to their body again? And what's that first step look like for them?
Getting an understanding of what it is that's going on in their system. So, and that's why I've created this course from surviving to thriving. And the very first part, or the very first course within that, is from stress to bliss, because we need to learn how to down regulate that nervous system so that we're removing a lot of the stress out of our body by completing the body-based stress process and increasing our bliss hormones, because that's the other thing, we're chronically short of all the bliss hormones, the good ones.
Mhm.
Okay, so we go looking for them in the inappropriate places. But if we can do that, we start to move forward and we grow new capacity to be in the world.
All right. Now, for those who are listening, they said they've tried regular therapy, talk. Where does somatic therapy change from talk to this? What's the difference and wh- how can they decide if it's right for them?
Okay, so all the talking therapies are aimed at your clever front brain, where you've got all your executive processing and your speech centers and your cognitive information. Unfortunately, that's not where trauma lives and it's not where stress lives. And actually, your front brain can contribute to you to staying in this stress cycle. Okay. Your body is held by your hindbrain. Okay. The really primitive parts. So you don't actually need to do talk therapy. If you learn how to complete the body-based stress process, which is relatively simple, but we tend to self-sabotage. And again, I'm inclined to blame our clever front brain for the self-sabotage because it goes, no, I'm the most powerful thing around here. I'll do that later. But if we can learn how to do it, if we can learn how to encourage ourselves to complete the body-based stress process, I
Mm.
find my clients don't even need to talk about their stress or trauma because the body knows what it needs to work with.
Now, what does it look like in your program when someone truly starts to shift from surviving to thriving? Do you have a story that you can share that stuck with you?
Okay, so one of my early clients had major traumas from her family of origin, which is not uncommon.
Hmm.
And after about, oh, I don't know, I think we'd been working together for about 6 months. And she had to go to a family reunion. So we worked through techniques for her to use when she was triggered and what she could do. And she was really dreading it because it had always, in the past, these family reunions ended in debacle. I got an SMS from her saying, "What have you done to me? Who is this woman in my body who has not bought in to any of the family tragedies and dynamics? And my husband and I have had just the best time."
Wow, that is such a story when someone realizes they can't just get pulled into all the BS of the family history, the families.
Correct.
I mean, that's such an achievement because, I mean, both you and I know that family reunions could lead to so much crap and back talk and just all around nastiness because who knows what you're gonna get.
Yes. And well, actually, and particularly with your siblings, because siblings grew up learning which buttons to press, and they may not have done it deliberately. Sometimes they've done it deliberately, but we respond before we've even thought about it. Because this is another thing that I've noticed completing the body based stress cycle does. I've always heard psychologists and people say there's that moment between the trigger and the response. The
Hmm.
majority of people I've worked with have had no moment to choose how they're going to respond. But once they get into this completing the body based stress cycle, there is the moment. And I know I've found that in myself. It's like, wow, I can feel that trigger coming at me. What do I want to do about it?
Hmm.
And I usually choose, I'm going to ignore it and let it go.
I mean, that's such a great thing because a lot of people don't know how to handle when the trigger gets triggered.
Correct. Yep.
And yeah, I mean, you've taught her, hey, you gotta, when you get a trigger, just ignore it. Let it go.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's not worth arguing. It's not worth dealing with. They're just there to push your buttons. And a lot of people don't realize no matter where you are, there's gonna be someone who's gonna push your buttons. Don't mean to, don't know they're doing it, and then you're gonna walk away and you're gonna have stress. And that stress is just gonna fester and you don't know it.
Yes. And I want to just make clear stress in itself is not a bad thing. We need stress because stress helps us by going through and completing the
Mhm.
stress process. That's where we learn and we grow and we heal. So we need stress. But when we hold it and don't do anything with it, that's when it can fester and become bad stress.
Yeah. Now, I
Yep.
mean, let's talk a little bit about stress. What do you tell somebody who's dealt with stress and all of a sudden it starts creeping back into them? What tools or reminders do you come up with to like personally tell them, hey, this is how you can stay grounded. This is how you can deal with that stress without letting it get to you.
Okay. So this is an ongoing process. We're going to receive stressors till the moment we die. So really, completing your body-based stress process is something you're going to do for the rest of your life. You may not have done it up till now. And you may find your front brain sabotages you and you find you go for days, weeks, months where you don't. But what's happening is, okay, one good analogy is we are meant to be pulsating beings. Our heart pumps. Our whole system is worked on this pulsation. What unresolved stress and trauma do is they solidify us. So when I feel really solid and stuck, that's a sign that I haven't been completing my body-based stress process. So if I listen to my thoughts, they're stuck. If I feel my emotions, they're stuck. And when I look at more, into my body, it's stuck. So when I start completing the body-based stress process, again, I start to pulsate and get back into the rhythm of life.
Now, I mean, people don't realize this, that, yeah, you got stress every day of your life, but it's how you deal with it. And stress is, if I'm right, answer if I'm right, stress is one of the reasons people get stuck.
Sorry, say that again.
Stress is one of the reasons people get stuck in their life where they can't move forward.
Yeah. And well, there's always stress, but it's the non-resolution of the stress process is where we get stuck. Okay. And I want to also give an example of once you understand this process, you can actually predict behaviors, your own and other people's, which is really handy when you've got kids. It's really handy in a workplace. So when I first have a stress situation that I haven't resolved, okay, so some stressor is coming at me. I might, if it's a physical one, I might feel just a twinge of discomfort, or I might feel a little frisson of, oh, I feel a bit uncomfortable with that, or I might feel a little bit irritated. So if you look at the discomfort one of where I withdraw into myself, I'm a little bit concerned, compared with the irritation, I'm a bit more into a coming out. So one's a flight response and one's a fight response. So they're really low level. But if I don't complete my body-based stress process over time, what was initially a little discomfort in my shoulder is now an ache in my shoulder. It's a little bit more consistent. That concern has grown into ongoing worry. And I've had people say to me, oh, I'm a born worrier. No, nobody was born worrying.
No.
But it's become their habit.
Yeah.
And the irritation becomes frustration. Oh, and it's just below the surface and it can bubble up. At that level, we can still hide those symptoms from other people. But as it goes on, that pain or that ache now becomes a full-blown pain, and I need to do an intervention. And others are aware of it, and they go, can you stop whinging about it? Go and take some painkillers and stop it. I don't want to know about your pain. Because as we're coming up with all these symptoms, it's taking more energy. And when I interact with someone else, my energy is saying, come and meet me where I am. And you're going, I'm already there. I don't want to get involved in your energy of that. I'm trying to dissociate from mine. I don't need to know where you are. The worry now becomes anxiety, and nobody likes to be around anxious people.
No.
The frustration becomes anger, and you'll even hear people saying, I'm not angry. I don't know why you say I'm angry. So everyone else is aware of where we are, and it makes them feel uncomfortable, and we can no longer hide it. But that's still all in the fight and flight zone. If that keeps escalating, we get into the overwhelm zone, and that pain becomes full-blown agony. I now need the equivalent of medical intervention to help with the pain. The anxiety becomes panic, and the anger becomes rage. Now, all three of those are highly dangerous. We know there's this huge increase in the use of fentanyl, which is an anesthetic that numbs pain. We know that someone in a panic attack can kill accidentally. So if someone's drowning and you don't have the skills and resources to save them, they can accidentally drown you because their system's going, I've got to get out, I've got to get out, and they can accidentally drown you. And rage in Australia, it's illegal. There's a one punch hit. If you do the one punch hit, you are going to jail because that's a rage response and it can kill. So this overwhelm zone is really dangerous, but you can see when someone's starting to escalate. So that's one I would point out to everybody. How are you feeling inside? If you're responding up high on the fight and flight responses, you need to do something about it before it becomes the overwhelm symptom.
Mhm.
Does that help?
Yeah, that helps because that reminds me of a story I came across one day when I was at school, and it's the same story, but it's this, it's a teacher walks into his classroom, holds up a jug of water to his class, and he goes, "How much does this weigh?" And he gets all sorts of responses from a pound to a kilo, and he goes, "Wrong." He's like, I can hold it for a minute and it won't bother me. I can hold it for an hour and my arm will start to ache. If I hold it for the entire day, I'm paralyzed. Learn to put it down. The minute you
Correct.
the minute you put and the message is you gotta put that stress away and move on with your life. Otherwise, you're gonna paralyze yourself.
Correct. And the other thing is when you're up in that overwhelm zone, it is so dangerous. Your nervous system
Mhm.
pops you up into dissociation.
Oh,
And that's where we have all our coping mechanisms, whether it's, carbohydrates, nicotine or alcohol, doesn't matter, or controlling behaviors or all sorts of things that we do as coping mechanisms. Screen time's one huge type of coping
oh
mechanism.
yeah.
So our nervous system will pop us up into that before we're even aware of it because that overwhelm zone is so dangerous. So if I'm spending all my time doing my coping mechanisms, it's because I'm overwhelmed. And I would predict that really 98% of the population are living in an overwhelmed state with huge ranges of coping mechanisms that may be okay or they may be really not okay, but they're there to help us to survive.
I mean, people don't, I mean, you're so right. People don't realize they're overwhelmed almost every single day. You get out into
Yes.
traffic, you get overwhelmed because you're stuck in traffic. You have
Yes.
kids, your kids constantly becking at you and calling you and wanting this and wanting that. It overwhelms you. Your nervous system goes on overload. Your
And
stress
it will pop
system.
you up to doing
Yeah.
your coping mechanisms so that you don't kill your children or, or you don't do road rage or you
Yeah.
don't do all the other things. So it says, do these coping mechanisms. So I often meet people who say, oh, no, I'm really good at dealing with stress. It doesn't impact me at all. You go, you've actually got really good, well, you've really strong coping mechanisms that may or may not be helping you.
I mean, now for the people out there who are listening right now who feel disconnected or burned out or likely just barely making it through the day, what would you want them to know? What would you say to their nervous systems if you could?
I would say learn how to complete your body-based stress process, and it will involve body movement of some form. And
And
that, if you're doing, and you'll probably have to learn it with a somatic psychotherapist or do an online course. And I've already mentioned I've got one that's going live, and it's all about how do you understand what's happening in your body and how do you move forward so you can regain your own life.
and finally, where can people find out more about you online?
Online, my website is From Surviving to Thriving, where the two is a number two, from surviving to thriving.com.au. And on there, I've got a lot of resources already. And there's now a link to a waiting list because my course is going live in the next couple of weeks. And offering it at a third its full price to start with for a limited number of people. Only 15 people actually on that initial one. But the feedback I'm getting already on the course is phenomenal.
And that's it, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Reed Miles, and that was Suzy Butts, and I'll see you in the next one. Thank you, Suzy.
Thank you, Miles.